Welcome to Film Phreeks. This is Justin Llewellyn.
Eddie Williams.
And tonight we're going to be doing another audio discussion, and this time we're going back to television again. We're going to be discussing the newest season of Stranger Things, which premiered on Netflix on the 4th of July. And happy Independence Day, everyone. And as the night that we're recording this is also the night right before my birthday, so tomorrow will be my birthday, and I'll be 27. And
this is one of the only times we've ever really, if you guys go back in our review history, we've done the last two seasons.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Pretty much, we're going to try to get into TV, but it's so hard because of how long TV can stretch out and series can stretch out. We kind of have a hard time, but because we're going to try to do others like Ozark and other ones. But for right now, the one that him and I seem to always be getting done on when it first comes out is the Stranger Things. So we started reviewing the first two seasons. I believe last year we decided to go ahead and do them both together, and now here it is, season 3. Yeah,
and in this season, it's directed by the Duffer Brothers, who created the show, and it also brings back a lot of the returning cast members, including Winona Ryder, David Harbour, Millie Bobby Brown, and among others. And in this season, in the town of Hawkins, Indiana. It's now summertime, and it's a year later after the events of season 2, where our main characters, the kids that we grow and love, they've gotten a little older now, and they're pretty much they're almost preteens basically, and it's set in the summer of 1985. And basically, the big focal points that this season sets up is the new mall that's in town, which is the Starcourt Mall, which is basically it's putting out other stores out of business. And not to get the plot started, pretty much in the beginning we see that there's these Russians that are trying to build this machine to unleash the creatures that are from the upside down world, and then basically their plan is to unleash the creatures and wreak havoc. And we'll kind of leave it there because I mean we'll get to some spoilers here later after we do our more synopsis of it.
It's basically the reminisce, not really wreak havoc, but it's something that to do with, and it matches the decade very well. In the Cold War we had with the Soviet Union, where basically when we get on a topic, basically the countries would go at it to see who can make it better. I guess it was pointing out that, okay, now that the Americans stopped doing it, we want to come to and try to break inside it and do it better than the Americans did it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of Cold War-ish. And basically it's basically it's basically pretty watered down with the whole Russian trying to get in the upside down world. Meanwhile, we get, our cast, which pretty much, goes in their storylines where there's something going on where maybe possibly one of the creatures did not get closed in season 2 when 11 closed the gate.
Yeah, and then basically, when they see the opportunity to try to get the creatures to unleash it, one of the character that was introduced last season, Billy, who was the town bully of the show, who became, redeemed himself and everything. He's the lifeguard in this season, and he ends up at first he's trying to kind of like flirt with Mike's mom, and because she tries to set him up or tries to go out to meet up with him and all that, and then while he's on his way there and everything, he ends up getting into basically a car crash, and he ends up basically getting pulled into the upside down world, and throughout the rest of the season he's becoming pretty much possessed by the creatures.
Yeah.
And he's trying to lure other people in to try to bring them to the upside down world, and then
they didn't really pull him in the upside down world. What really happened was there was a part of the creature that he got closed out with us instead of being closed in the gates, and basically it's trying to doesn't have its world helping, so it's trying to build its own army.
Yeah, and then pretty much throughout the rest of the season, he is recruiting. He's getting other people possessed and stuff, and it almost becomes kind of like a cross between George Romero's The Crazies and like even Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the way that these people are like possessed and shit.
Body Snatchers very Day of the Dead-ish, which comes into context in the storyline, and very the Crazies type look to him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then while this is going on, we also have the storyline where Eleven and Mike are now getting closer together, and they're making out constantly. And Sheriff Hopper or Hooper, or is it Hooper or Hopper?
Who adopted Eleven?
Who adopted Eleven?
Now is the official father.
Yeah, he wants to try to give them more time apart because he notices that they're always constantly on each other and everything. And it actually sets up a great story arc involving of his relationship with Eleven and everything. And basically, throughout about midway through the season, her and Mike end up becoming kind of separated for a little bit. And she starts to basically get
into another part. Is this is the first time that we are going to where this season basically everybody has their own path to the final season, the final episode.
Yeah.
So everybody is separated for the first time.
Yeah.
And this would also mark the very first time that they actually decided to not use Will as a gate and somebody else.
Yeah, which I thought was actually interesting because in this he can still sense that the creatures are there and everything because he feels it in the back of his neck, but throughout it he's still they don't capture him this time. Instead they use Billy as the bait, and throughout
which I think was a good change because I would hate to have to see the same story again.
Yeah, so
that was probably the best thing. And I actually believe it because the creature somewhat sees Will as more of a fighter against it than being, working together. So what I believe the creature did was, this time I'm going to find a host that's actually me. And if you guys remember when we got introduced with Billy last season, no matter what, how it ended and everything, Billy's a jackass. He's a dickhead.
Yeah, and then pretty much while this is also going on, we get introduced to this new character that's joining the crew with who's working at the mall with Steve from the last 2 seasons, and this girl named Robin, who's actually, believe it or not, is actually the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. And
not with that, not to throw it off topic for a second, we also got to introduce a guy from Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah, Jake Busey. Yeah, I remember him.
Jake Busey, which came in, and that's where the girl and the guy, I forgot
Nancy and Charlie.
Yeah, they're working for the Post at their town, the newspaper, and basically, she's getting bashed for being a woman trying to be, a woman of power trying to take a job. As a journalist. So she gets a group of guys, one of them played by Busey, who's basically picking on her the whole fucking time.
I'm sorry, not Charlie, Jonathan. That's what I meant. Jonathan and Nancy. Yeah, they're pretty much they're causing ruckus around trying to make fun of them and stuff, and the news about journalism or about their stuff they're doing.
Picking on Nancy because she's a woman she wants to be of power and wants to lead things.
Yeah.
So they basically they all bash the shit out of her.
Yeah, and then while this is also going on, we deal with, at first we kind of deal with some small moments with Joyce, Winona Ryder's character, who's going through the loss of, if you remember, spoilers, in the last season, Sean Astin's character got killed when he did that sacrifice, and she's, thinking about him of all the times that he had, and she's basically living with guilt and everything, and then basically throughout also the season, we're starting to get hints that her and Hopper are trying to get back together, or I'm sorry, trying to flirt with each other, because he's trying to. There's a part in one of the episodes where he's trying to get her to go on a date with him and stuff, and she ends up discovering something that happens that basically leads into the pathway that they take to reach the aliens part, where she ends up discovering these weird magnets
weren't sticking. Found out that some magnetic field in Hawkins is no longer valid.
Yeah.
And basically she's starting to sense that shit's about to happen again, starts getting worried and starts going on a journey. And like we said, you got a lot of people pretty much going on their own journeys. You got Nancy and Jonathan doing their own. You got Hopper and Winona Ryder's character going on their own journey. 11, when her and Mike are forced to break up, she goes on more of what really reminds me of John Hughes type of vibe with women of the 80s, and where they go to the mall, they do a lot of fashion and stuff, and her and the redhead we were introduced
Max.
last season ended up doing
Max.
girl things. They go on their own journey.
Yeah, Max. And
And then you have Steve. Of course, he befriended. God,
Robin.
I'm having a hard time thinking names.
Robin.
The goofy kid.
Oh yeah, Dustin.
Dustin. That you kind of knew from last season that they got real close at the end of last season, and now they're really good friends. Basically, him and introduced with Uma Thurman's daughter. They kind of do the whole Cold War, investigating because they found Dustin transmitted Russian context in town.
Yeah, and I actually liked how the film, the series was kind of going with that whole kind of like Red Dawn, kind of like Cold War type vibe that they're going for, but on the kind of feel of it, which I thought was kind of cool. But
yeah, I did like Red Dawnish, but I have a con personally when we get in our pros and cons. I have a con. It's 50-50 with me on that.
well, I got you, but yeah. So basically, long story short, they all end up having to go through the same path that leads into the Russians pretty much coming in to where they end up sending in this guy that's kind of like the reminiscent. He's basically like a kind of an homage to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator from the 1984 film, who comes in trying to look for basically the Russians are trying to look for this when they look for some kind of device or something that, or no, they're looking for the scientist that ends up getting captured by Hopper and Joyce, because
the Russians weren't there to do anything other than open the gate. And it wasn't until the kids start stooping their nose into their business and Hopper finding out that we have unwanted Russians in their town. That's when the Russians start sending the Terminator dude after him.
That's right. Yeah, now I have to remember.
Because before then, they didn't even care because no one knew they were there. Because another introductory, we actually get, I like to call him as Dr. Lawrence Gordon from Saul.
Cary Elwes.
Played by
Cary Elwes.
Yeah. He plays the mayor of town. And basically, he made playing a dirty politician that knew about it, and basically the Russians paid him to keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, that's right. And pretty much as the story unfolds, we start getting to quite some different twists and turns that happen, especially with the plot points where we actually get into some more backstory in this season with Billy, which we'll get into some spoilers here later on, but I like that they took a really more interesting character arc this time, and we're getting to more to know of his character from the last season. And
I actually kind of like that because it makes more sense that something that evil creature, I wouldn't think that he would go after Will, seeing as Will pushed him away twice.
Well, yeah.
So you can kind of believe that the creature this time was looking for more of a badass, a guy who's like a delinquent, and that's what Billy is.
Yeah.
And that made more sense that whenever he decided to look for Billy and possess him.
Yeah, and I gotta say, we don't really want to go over the place with the plot, but I gotta say to get some of my to give an overall consensus, I will say that I did enjoy this season, but it's definitely my least favorite of the other two seasons. But it still does hit the mark in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I love all three seasons. Don't get me wrong. Every Stranger Things season brings its own thing to the table, which I like. But whenever I add them as a whole, like he said, I also as well believe that season 3 is the weakest, unfortunately. But it still was good.
Yeah, and to get some of my pros out of the way, I got to say that the once again the cast, they're all fantastic, and I liked a lot of the new developments that we get in this season, especially with Billy and 11, which I thought were really strong. And the biggest standout for me the most was actually Hopper in this, because we really see how much he truly cares for 11, and he's basically being a really good father figure through this season, and how she is getting older and stuff, and he's trying to just wants her to be happy, basically.
Yeah, I also agree as well. The cast, as always, the kids are phenomenal. Everybody's got great chemistry. It was great to see, them growing up. It's weird that, they skipped 1 year, if you guys don't remember. They did skip 1 year, so you can kind of see back in season 1 and season now and seeing as if they were your own children growing up.
Yeah.
And I really like that whole vibe. Kind of watching them grow up, and I'm still anxious. I can't wait to see them grow up even older and see what they could do later on. I do like the new entry characters, like Uma Thurman's daughter. Her and Steve chemistry work perfect.
Absolutely.
Fucking hilarious together.
Absolutely, and I also got to give credit to even though
Billy, I'm glad. I have like a con though, and it's not his fault. Billy was probably one of my favorites of this season, as far as being an evil villain. And my con with that was I felt like they didn't focus on him enough.
Yeah.
Because he was pretty much my highlight villain in this. And if they would have stuck with something simple as the possession and hosting and really didn't go the whole Russian thing, I think this season would have been a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that a lot. In fact, that was actually that was really what caught my attention most, was throughout the scenes with, him getting pretty much the possessed like people of the town and stuff, and doing the whole invasion of the body snatchers.
And it shows that it was kind of like doing kind of like a Children of Cornish type feel.
Yeah.
Where you could turn it into more of a slasher type thing, where they're going around, that's using that type of vibe to go after and kill people.
Yeah.
In this town.
And
I think they should have done that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah,
but, Billy was fucking great. He was perfect as a villain.
And once again, like these other two seasons have, they capture the '80s vibe really well in this fucking show.
Yes,
like
they do. Yes, they do.
The cinematography, the soundtrack, the callbacks to like movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High with the whole mall setting and stuff. Like, it is so outstandingly nostalgic, and you really get the vibe.
Yeah.
If you're someone that grew up in the '80s, this is definitely the show to go to.
I will say I'm a kid of the '80s. I'm a lot older than Justin, and this kind of reminds me of '80s, because '80s and '90s go hand in hand on the whole mall hangout thing. And I will tell you right now, it brings back memories I wish would come back.
Yeah.
I wish that type of vibe would come back, mall ratting and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing, and that's something I actually grew up doing back in those days. And
plus, I love
the whole vibe of the '80s. I noticed every season picks a form of movie that they go by. Season 1 really didn't, because really it's more of its own story, because they were just getting started. But if you guys remember in season 2, they really focused on Ghostbusters a lot. And in season 3, Day of the Dead, which is one of my favorite zombie films of all time, is the main focus theme.
Yeah, and I also love the theme of the whole 4th of July aspect in this, because the whole summer feeling. I like that it was they were straying away from the whole like fall setting that we kind of saw in the first 2 seasons, and going for the summer seasons where it's it's hot outside and they're going to the fields and stuff, doing everyday activities as kids.
That's why I did like that change setting. The first 2 seasons took place on Halloween. This one changed it.
Yeah, and the other part I gotta admit the most is like the score is also top notch as usual. You get that really fun theme from the classic score from the other seasons.
Yeah.
But you also have what's also interesting was I was actually surprised they actually get away with you actually get to hear themes of the Day of the Dead and also Back to the Future in some scenes, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other biggest pro I will say the most is when it gets toward the last 3 episodes, well, mainly the last episode, I will say that it had quite an emotional payoff that I thought was pretty heartbreaking in the end.
Yeah, despite us thinking that season 3 is our least liked, I think it has the saddest ending of all the seasons together. And we're not gonna spoil how it ends, but I will say, man, it got me more than the Sean Astin from season 2.
Yeah,
or the sacrifice that we thought 11 did in season 1.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll break down the spoilers here later on in this video, just to kind of go over some certain things that kind of fall into our pros and cons. But yes, the way that it pays off in the end, I thought was a very emotional, poignant, triumphant note. And it makes me really feel for it for the next season. And
not only that, we saw a movie this year because there's some sad parts with the a death of certain characters, but there was also another emotional ending which kind of pays reminisce of a film we saw this year.
Yeah,
it was really sad.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Doing more of breaking up and moving on.
Yeah,
type of vibe.
Exactly. And the other biggest praise I have to give the most is when there's another pro I do have, and this is kind of a minor thing, but the Russian dude that they get to kind of go on with Hopper and Joyce, I thought that as the more time they spend with this character, I actually kind of became attached to for a while because he actually.
I did too because I thought his chemistry with. By the way, they bring back the guy from season 2. If you guys remember, there was a kind of like a nut job conspiracy theory guy that was kind of bald.
Yeah.
In season 2, he was a conspiracy theory thinking Russians are coming for us and all this weird shit. And he lived in a bunker. They bring him back, and he actually befriends this Russian. I actually enjoyed their chemistry.
I did too, and I like how he was translating for Hopper in a lot of scenes. And when he's Hopper just gets pissed every time he finds out what he's saying and stuff because he's trying to get information out of him. He's like, no cherry, no deal, and because he's trying to get food and stuff before he can talk.
Yeah.
So
just fucking with him, and then he doesn't want to go back, obviously, because how Soviets are back in the day. Once they think you spilled your guts, they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
Your own people kill you. So he didn't want to go back. So he actually ends up wanting to stay with Hopper and them.
Yeah, the other biggest praise I have to give the most for this season, especially, is this season surprisingly got through with a lot of gore in it. That a lot more compared to the other 2 seasons.
Yeah, there was a lot of gore. We really didn't have much. I mean, it's at its minimum peaks in the other 2 seasons, maybe 2 getting a little bit more. But this one really took more of a slasher type of route with some of the gore and stuff. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I was actually surprised.
Especially humans. They're actually showing a lot of human deaths, and I'm not going to mention some of them, but it gets pretty bloody.
Oh, yeah, definitely, dude. So, I mean, they're like everything that this season has going for it. There's a lot of great, moments in the season and a lot of great episodes as well. But this is kind of where it falls a little bit more to our cons. And while I did enjoy the majority of the season, I will say that for my biggest con I have to point out the most is the first few episodes feel like they did kind of drag a little bit for me. Like the pacing was a little slow at the beginning.
For the first time this season is an issue, and it has a lot to do with lack of balance. Like he said, your introductory with the whole love theme is cool the first episode, but then it kind of stretches a little while throughout the couple episodes. And another con I have is, while I can get why they did the whole Russian thing because of the Cold War, the 80s, Red Dawn, da-da-da-da-da-da, I did not find them very interesting at all. I really didn't. I just couldn't get into them, and the problem really bothers me when they actually outdo the monster and Billy and everybody. They are the main focus villains. I did not like that, and I personally thought the American Scientists from the first 2 seasons, mainly 1, were far better.
Yeah, I did too, and because it really just feels like the consistency was a little off throughout the season. Because for about the middle section with the middle episodes, when it gets to like 4 and 5, episodes like 3, 4, and 5, we do spend a majority of the time like mainly focused on the Russian parts, and then
especially with Dustin and Steve and that girl. That we spent a lot of time them getting stuck in that bunker with that one guy's little sister too. That one I kind of thought was annoying, and she's back in it again, and she's herself again.
Yeah.
You remember little black girl?
Yeah, Erica.
Erica. You focus on them, like in this Russian bunker, going back with these Russians, trying to break the seal of the upside down world to try to get in. You focus like about 5 out of 8 episodes on that, and it was ruining the good stuff I liked about the villains with Billy and the whole creature trying to set up its own army. I wish they would have just focused on that.
Yeah, I did too. And plus, it would have been also great if they really spent more time, like, building up to certain moments with the Russians. Like, what exactly... Because really, they didn't really the writing I felt like was very lacking because all there really are, they're basically like puppets for the actual alien, for the actual creatures. And while that was how it was in the other two seasons, here you felt like it stood out a much because really they don't really have like much of a connection sort of thing like the other seasons had. Well, if that makes sense, because like the other two seasons,
you felt like the Russian storyline is more forced because of the whole '80s Cold War thing than it is necessary to the story.
Yeah, and
it really serves no purpose. They're just another generic, but to me, a generic version of the scientists from season 1.
Yeah,
it feels like that. I feel like the writers feel like they have to have somebody like that. They really necessarily don't. They could have went with the whole Billy Army thing with this creature thing, and that would have worked perfectly.
Yeah,
but anyways, another con I had, while I do like their chemistry every season, and I did kind of liked it at first, but I thought was too drawn out, was the banter between him and Winona Ryder. While I did like their banter for a while, it does kind of get more scratching the nail type of feel as it keeps going on and on and on, to the point where you kind of just want to yell at the show and say, just get your fucking problems out and solve it, please.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that in some scenes I will agree with you on, but one thing that I do kind of thought was kind of, that the writers were kind of like in on it with was that one of the other guys that's with them, the guy, the weird conspiracy nut, he actually points that out in the show, and I thought that that actually was kind of, that actually was needed for those scenes.
Yeah.
So
well, I'll agree with you on the self-awareness. The self-awareness is pretty good in the show, seeing as they point out how season 3s or part 3s can actually be a little underwhelming compared to the other two movies, and they do point that out. And like you said, I will give you credit. I agree with you on the whole guy pointing it out, saying, "Shut up, get along, fix your shit, and get along."
Yeah,
I get the whole self-awareness, and that actually is pretty good.
Yeah,
that's the first time they've ever done that.
But the other thing I will say too is that another con I do kind of have is, the consistency with the creatures. Like, they come and go basically in some episodes. Like, you'll have also the main creature that we've seen like in the other two seasons, it doesn't even really show up until the very last episode.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Demogorgon.
Yeah.
The Demogorgon, the real face of the franchise. Yeah, they really don't. The one with the little Venus flytrap mouth, that damn thing doesn't come into the very freaking end in a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
You do not get a Demogorgon in this season. The thing that we see that's left by itself is a mini version of the King, because it was like part of its leg. And they call those the shadow monsters.
Yeah, but
and you don't even see that shadow monster hardly. You see him in bits and pieces, and then you finally get him at the final fight, which you kind of can predict it's going to happen.
Well, yeah, of course, and but overall, well, this is we kind of segue more into some of our spoilers that we're going to go into a little bit detail with. So, for those of you who haven't seen season 3 yet. You can turn the video off right now if you want to, or the audio off for now, and then you can skip it forward toward the end and we'll get back to our overall grade. But for now, I figure we go over just because this is a TV series, I figure we go into just some minor spoilers that we wanted to dive into, that to kind of go into more detail with our cons. So right from the beginning, I'll go with this. When it really goes to like the whole Russian thing, I will say that while there is some cool stuff with like the Terminator dude, I did feel like you were saying, the whole vibe of them just being generic and stuff, it really falls short, especially when you have a lot of scenes where they're constantly going after Hopper and Joyce and all that, and it's very rinse and repeat a lot of the time.
Another thing that I will say that is a weird, and I guess it's kind of based in trying to think reality. How the fuck did they not know that those Russians were under the fucking mall making that much ruckus?
Yeah, exactly. And, the fact that,
especially whenever the Russians are walking around the mall with fucking AKs.
That, and also... Well, that, and also when you have guys that are clearly, you can spot them pretty much a mile away in certain areas, you would think that guys being professionals like that would not hide, would be better to hide themselves and not blow their cover, But the other thing I will say is that we're coming through the spoilers now. The biggest strong point for me the most is the story arc we get into with Hopper, because throughout the rest of the season, we see that since he's diving into his relationship with Eleven and stuff, I will say that payoff they do at the end when he makes that final sacrifice, it had me in fucking tears.
It did. Winona Ryder has this part where, because basically the Russians are using like this nuclear thing to try to break it, and throughout the whole season you see this machine really fucking spinning out of control, and it's trying to open, and basically they're needing to destroy the machine so they don't open it up and bring out the monsters and be back to square one again. And Winona Ryder pretty much gets to this point where while Hopper's fighting this one Russian dickhead, the Terminator dude, she's basically trying to shut the machine off, but she can't. She's got to make a choice to do it instantly, right then and there. And basically, after Hopper beats the shit out of the Terminator dude, he notices that the machine is kind of busted up, and it's pretty much he has no way out. So he just looks at her and tells her to do it.
Yeah.
And then she destroys it, and it kills him.
Yeah, and then the moment I seen that, it made me think back to that heartbreaking moment when Tony Stark made that sacrifice in Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
I almost...
Another emotional death would be two other ones. One being the Russian guy that turned good. We see a part where they're at a fair, and he's actually want to learn American life.
Yeah, and I actually thought...
Fairgrounds, he wants to eat corn dogs and see how Americans live. And it's very short-lived when he walks off by himself, and that Terminator guy comes out of the crowd and shoots him.
Yeah.
Just killing him.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he was actually one of my favorites.
Yeah, he was actually really fun, and that killed me. And then Billy, actually, another sad death, which we get a lot of backstory about his abuse he got from his father, and how he was forced to do things he didn't like, like winning, be a champion, do this, do that. If you're not, you're nothing. And basically, you kind of get a backstory on him, and then upon him being the villain and being possessed, there's a glimpse scene where he actually comes to himself after his sister, talks to him, and basically he fights the shadow monster right back, and he loses the battle.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty emotional too, especially the build up to that with him earlier, when Eleven, because throughout the rest of the season, Eleven's inside his mind, because she basically does that thing where she can go inside people's minds and stuff, and she ends up seeing a glimpse of him when he was a boy at a beach with his mother. And I thought that scene was pretty emotional because it showed how much memories he had of his mom and stuff, and you really get the sense of why he later became abused by his dad and stuff. And I thought that was pretty heartbreaking.
It also really digs deep into a guy strong that plays off as a strong, like a drifter type tough guy.
Yeah.
And it shows that everybody's got a soft side in him.
Yeah.
And there was a purpose to why he was who he was. There was a soft side in him that wanted to come out. And I really liked that. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and plus it was also,
And then the ending, the most other big emotional, because of the events that keeps happening, we get a Toy Story 4 ending where everybody splits off and decides it's time to move on to different towns and move away.
Yeah, and
because of Hopper's death, Winona Ryder ends up adopting Eleven, and her and Will and Jonathan, pretty much everybody's got to break up because they're all moving to other parts of the U.S.
Yeah, but that's also where we get that really like genuine moment where him and Mike are actually confessing their love to each other, and I also found it very I was on the verge of tears. Actually, I was in tears when she was reading that letter about what Hopper left to her, because earlier in the season he was trying to basically tell her how much she really meant to him and stuff, and how her and Mike were, spending too much time. They wanted to just kind of give her some space and stuff. And that scene where she's reading that letter was just so heartwarming and so emotional.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was, and it has a lot to do. If you guys didn't watch last season, we discovered Hopper had a daughter who passed away.
That's right. Yeah.
I guess 11 is more like his comfort zone. It's his daughter's back again to him.
Yeah.
So 11 is going to mean so much, the world to him, and that really digs deep into that reason. He goes into a little bit of detail in the season where he's telling Winona Ryder about his daughter.
Yeah, and then we also find out after Billy ends up stopping the monsters and stuff. While she's doing that, we also discover that she's lost her powers again, and she's basically having to regain them after that of the next season.
Yeah.
And then it pretty much ends where they're all moving on their own, and they end up going on their separate probably one of the most emotional endings I've seen in a television series.
Exactly, and despite some of our flaws we have for the first time ever on these shows, the ending does have the best ending in me, and the emotional aftermath of taking down the main villains. It has the most emotional closure out of the past 3 seasons.
Yes, and then after
it's just a shame that they couldn't focus on the stuff I mentioned earlier in the review that they couldn't focus on. Because, like I said, the Russian thing I felt like it was there for the 80s. It was pushed on us too much.
And then pretty much when that leads into the post-credit scene that we get where it takes place in Russia, and we see that these two guys are going to this prison area where they at first they say that there's a guy that's inside the cell that's an American, and they don't want to use him for this creature that they have, and so they end up taking a regular guy that's a Russian into this pit where this monster is, and that's the only scene that we see with the Demarmagu.
The Demodor.
Demodor, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's got me pumped for season 4, but my only worry with that is that I hope they put the Russian storyline into more of a minimum in the next season.
Yeah.
Because I hope
they end up not being the big face of the pretty much the big final villains, like you're supposed to get. We're going to get those, but I hope they're not the main purpose of everything, because really, that would really kind of kill the mood for me.
Yeah, and plus I got to say too that I hope in the next season that they bring back the whole other type of 11s that we saw in the second season with the whole telekinesis powers, because that actually would come in handy for the build up.
Abandoned to me, a lot of people might complain on this, but I actually was really interested in the storyline with season 1 and 2, which is how they connected, and how they were building more, where they dug deep into more people that's like 11, but they abandoned it in this season. And 1 and 2 really go hand in hand. This one kind of goes on its own merit. Yeah.
And so I hope they bring it back in the next season. But overall, I will say that, given for what it is, to kind of summarize it in the best way, I did enjoy a lot of season 3. It's just that some of the plot elements and some of the pacing kind of hold it back for me in some areas. But I still overall thought it was a really good season. And with that being said,
I'm the same thing with him. This is the first time I actually had flaws in a Stranger Things season, but it was really good. It just was my weakest, in my opinion. And hopefully, they can, keep on going with this. I'll never get old with this series.
Yeah. And so with that being said, after really thinking about it, it's given my kind of weighing it out to at an average level. If I'm going by just the ending alone, I would give that a phenomenal grade alone. But if I'm going by the overall season, because I have to kind of weigh it in there, I'm going to have to go with probably a high compelling grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
Yeah, I'm going to go a high compelling grade in Film Phreeks meter too. High compelling to me, I feel like it's given it, more than what it's worth. It should be more compelling, but I think high compelling grade is perfect for it. The first 2 seasons were phenomenal. So, like I said, this is my weakest one. So, yeah, it's a high compelling grade.
Fair enough. And for those of you who have also seen season 3 of Stranger Things, and also the other seasons as well, let us know in the comments below of what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, you can feel free to like and subscribe to our channel, and check out some other reviews here and our website at filmphreeks.com. And we'll be seeing you in our next review. We'll see you later.